sharing our hearts and Brook sharing his lifetime of wisdom. So this is episode 63. This is called What Are Reasonable Expectations? The Bell Curve. Now, I'm familiar with this bell curve idea, Brook, from being from sort of an educator's family and going to school myself. But as you normally do, you're probably applying it a little bit differently. So why don't you tell us what's going on here?
So I wanted to have this conversation today around the capacities that people have. I had a conversation with one of my people years ago around this idea of capable, more capable, less capable, incapable. And there's kind of this bell curve that goes with these people. You know, we don't all have the same capacities, and that's just a fact. And we can transfer this into every aspect of our life. We can transfer this into the professionals that we deal with. We can transfer this into the relationships that we have. Everybody's got their strong points. Everybody's got their weak points, but not everybody has the same capacities in any given area. And what I want to talk about today is this idea of personalities and their capacity for not being in conflict, and or their capacities for relationship, and or their capacities for parenting. And to be able to look historically at our experience with somebody, maybe look historically at our own history of capabilities in certain areas where we can actually up our game, but not having the expectations that somebody else can do something that they historically haven't been able to do, or that we know that they can't. So just to break that down in a couple of different areas, we're talking about personality types, we're talking about personality disorders, we're talking about addictions, we're talking about intellect, we're talking about these different arenas where people have different capacities. And so if we can start to look at this from a bell curve standpoint, you know, we've got the people that are far left on the bell curve that are just really in the tank. We've got people that are the average in the middle of this. And then we've got the people that are at the leading edge of really the capacities. And I wanted to bring this conversation into everybody's awareness. The people that are listening to this are parents that are in the middle of this, but also professionals, because if professionals can look at this from this perspective, I think that they can start to get more traction in how to deal with their clients as well. And conversely, clients with the professionals that they're hiring, so they can do a better job at selecting the people that they want to work with as well.
Yeah, and this, I don't know exactly where you're going to go with it today, but I mean, this is one of the ways I've stayed sane, is to say, like, I mean, to be really upset and angry at somebody, I kind of have to make some assumptions that, one, they had the capacity to do it the way I wanted them to. Two, they saw that fork in the road, so to speak. Am I going to be good or am I going to be bad? Sort of a dualistic, I'm applying a dualistic nonsense to them, right? Right. And then, they chose the bad way, and they're like, and therefore I'm angry because they had the ability and the moment where they made the decision, and they're like, screw Charlie, I'm going to hurt him. Well, that's not necessarily the way reality works, and I couldn't know it to be true if it did work that. Well, it's much more honest, and we've had some changes over the last, I would think, 2 decades in the world of mental illness. It's not seen as like you're crazy anymore. It is much more seen as a bell curve, like illness is. You know, don't get mad at the legless man who's not running. Like, he doesn't have legs, right? Like, what is your capacity? And the high conflict that our listeners are going through is evidence that on the other side there's something mental going on. And I don't mean mental like the person's crazy. I mean, there's some lack of capacity or oversensitivity or something. The dashboard lights are all flashing, right?
Right. You know, somebody may be absolutely brilliant in one area. You know, they may be an absolute genius, but emotionally not connected. And, you know, you're going to ask them to solve the theory of relativity, and they can do it. But you ask them to be in relationship, and they go blank, you know?
I think that's a good one.
You want to hire me to do counseling work with, but you don't want to hire me to do your plumbing or irrigation.
Yeah, your capacity for compassion and for understanding what somebody's going through or putting yourself in their shoes is probably really, really high. And it's been many years since Rain Man came out. I don't know if you've gone back and watched it again, but I remember it being like amazing. And then I watched it. I'm like, dude, it seems kind of not that well made because we've moved on so much in movie making. But the story and that idea, which to me, that was kind of the introduction to autism, honestly. Like I've never even heard of this before Rain Man. And now there's people in my family that have touches of autism or even really serious cases. There's for instance, in that one world, you could have somebody who's literally like a genius at math and has no capacity to think about what they're about to say is going to make another person feel, or to have, like, they're tactless. Does that make sense? They don't have any tact.
Right.
And so if you have an ex who often says hurtful things or doesn't consider your feelings, you're going to stay a lot more sane going, they can't. The part of the brain that says, what's it going to be like if I say you look fat in that dress or whatever? What's it going to make the other person feel like? That'll even have that part, the way somebody who's missing a limb can't use that arm or leg. It's not there. There's no reason to be mad. Being mad at them gets you nowhere.
So we want to come into this conversation of capable, more capable, less capable, and incapable. And the capability is, that person, I want to bring this, into the high conflict arena, into the relationship arena, and the parenting arena. And that'll be, kind of the context of what we talk about today. And the capable person, is somebody who has the capacity for cognitive and appropriate process. They can look at what's going on, just like what you were just saying. They can go, okay, this isn't going to go down right. I can sit back and make appropriate decisions from here. And then we have to look at who it is in this process that has that capability. And historically, we are going to know that. So is it me that has the capability? Is it the other person that has capability? Do we both have capability? Are we both somewhere on this bell curve? And to determine where it is. And while we're determining that, looking at, where we are on that bell curve and looking at how we can enhance our capability so we can move toward that right-hand side of that bell curve.
Yep. And it seems like the 30% of the 30% of the divorces we're talking to, the high conflict ones, is because the other 70% has two capable people that are able to, they have the cognitive capacity and the appropriate process to just go, well, I'm getting divorced. That's a bummer, right? And sort of go through it. And then in our world, you've got one of them who has the issues probably, who's kind of not bothered by it. Ignorance is kind of bliss in this sense. And then the one on the other side who has the capacity for cognitive thought and an appropriate process and can see the other person doesn't, is the one kind of going crazy because they're able to evaluate, well, that's not how you should be.
Right. Yeah. And while we're looking at that percentage breakdown that you just gave us again, Charlie, we have to, again, just come back to, we've got 70% of the people running through here that don't have at least one person with the level of historical trauma that has triggered these other pieces, or the lack of mental capacity that is triggering these other pieces, that there is a level of normalcy there. So now we're trying to take this 30% of the people that we're talking about in this arena and kind of parse out these levels of capability.
Right. Got it. Yep.
So the more capable in this is the person that traditionally has done the leading in the relationship, right? That isn't exactly true all the time, but oftentimes they are the glue to the family, that person that has been able to look at and process and do more of the leading in the relationship. They have the skills to do the things needed for the well-being of the children, and they put their needs first.
Yeah.
And I want to play with this for a minute, because people are going to hear this and they're going to say, yeah, that's me, that's me, that's me. And there's a place where we have to look at it from the other edge as, is that person that is doing that over enmeshed, over controlling with the children in that as well. So there's this distortion that can happen in that. And we have to pay attention to that, because from the other end of the spectrum that I'm going, and I'm going to seesaw back and forth so we can bring the lens in around a little bit, is the person that may not have been in that was not appearing to put the kids first, may have just been playing a different role. And when it comes back around and they try to engage, they're kept from engaging. So we want to look at that capacity from both ends, because that person may be totally capable and not having the opportunity, right?
Right. You can have somebody who was very much the leader, louder, made more rules, more controlling, but really what was going on is they were just expressing their authoritative parenting style in really unhealthy ways loudly.
Their authoritarian parenting style.
Authoritarian, sorry. Yeah, authoritarian, the unhealthy one.
Right.
Sort of the dictatorship, right?
Right. So, so this person that may be more capable, they're also capable of setting their anger and judgment aside. So this starts to become the indicator of the health in this more capable person.
Yep.
They have the ability to shift away from the fight and to disengage. It's like they can see the outcomes. That's the cognitive process of being able to see the outcomes and going, this isn't going to be good for the kids. This isn't going to be good for the other parent. This isn't going to be good for me, and the outcomes are not going to be okay. So I'm going to sit back and I'm going to process this, and I'm going to stay out of judgment. I'm going to dial back my anger, and I am going to disengage.
Yep.
So there's that piece. And then success for this more capable person isn't a win-lose. It is more of a, again, how do we create a win-win here? And if I do something, is this going to trigger a process that is going to be harder to manage?
Mm-hmm.
So when I look at this component, it's like, okay, I could use that extra money, but in asking for that, that's going to create another cycle that is going to cause an engagement, and that isn't a good idea. So it's better for me to sit back and navigate this rather than to engage in that process of trying to go, what's fair, or what is it that I need rather than what is it that the kids need. So back to that idea of putting the children's needs first.
Yep. Yep.
So this is the willingness to make sacrifices for the big picture.
Yeah. I mean, think of it as such a basic, important part of parenting, but some people don't have the capacity to do it, or the ability to do it.
Right. There's this component, this internal piece of, wait a minute, I have to have this. They can't see that without that, they're not okay. And then they need to fight to get that, so they're going to be okay, but they don't see the collateral damage that happens in that.
Yep.
So this person, again, that is the more capable in this process, typically doesn't need to get something because it's their right or it's fair. It's like they can sit back and go, no, I can let this go. This is something that I could fight for, that typically, is my right. This is what would be fair, but they can let that one pass by.
Right. I would think even thinking that way is a sign of capability, whereas the other person's more reactive.
Right. And then this person has the ability, and this is important for everybody to look at as they're assessing themselves and the other person, is that they have the ability to self-regulate and self-assess, self-reflect. Mm-hmm. And that's not something that high conflict personalities have. And that component in and of itself is an indicator that, they're not in this more capable situation, that they're not to the right-hand side of this bell curve.
Yeah. Well, they're capable of something, man. They sure get some stuff done in the court system. And I mean, I talked to somebody recently that hadn't seen her kids since 2016. And
right.
They create realities and get things done but it's not capability of creating health in the kids or healthy co-parenting.
Right. And what we're really talking about here is finding the health in it. And the high conflict personalities are really capable. They're highly capable of creating chaos. They're highly capable of being self-centered and looking only at what is important to them.
Yeah. It reminds me of like a highly skilled sniper or something like that. Like, you're incredible. You can test the wind and shoot somebody in the head from, however far out they do it, 500 feet or whatever. But like, you're a murderer and you go to bed at night without caring about it. Like, somehow
Right.
it's something's weird going on here,
Right. Right. So the less capable. I think the less capable person is not that they're incapable, but they don't have the set of skills. Yeah. And this is typically the person that's not been the leader in the day-to-day parenting. Some of these people that are less capable isn't that they can't get there, but they're not there. That they've played a role and they've been maybe a little out to lunch on the role that they've been playing. They didn't know what to do. And in the moment when we're making this adjustment, they are not the most capable or the more capable person in the equation. And these are the people that need to gain the skills for their parenting to care for the children. Mm-hmm. So that means that they have some ability to take personal responsibility, to reflect and go, you know what? I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm going to reach out and I'm going to get some help. Right. And I'm going to up my capacity and I'm going to move myself a little more to the right on that bell curve. Right? I want to move. There's a desire within them to get it. And there's a recognition that they don't. So within that, there's this also sense of, or a look at that they have been a bit self-centered.
Yeah. But
they are capable of adjusting to focus on the kids.
It seems like the arrogance and humility scale is useful in this world because humility is a sign of capability, it seems like. The ability to look at yourself and not think you're perfect or see where you need to learn. If your spouse died when your kids were infants and you're like, I've never changed a diaper, I don't know how to do that, I need to learn how to change a diaper, that's a very tiny picture of some of what we're talking about. When you add all of the parenting from infant to college and after, right? And all the non-physical stuff, not the changing of diapers, right? But the setting of boundaries and the authoritative, right? The healthy authority, not authoritarian. It's the same thing going, I don't know how to change a diaper, or I don't know how to set appropriate boundaries and issue proper, whatever, disciplines or consequences, right? It starts with humility and say, I need to go out and learn, which is, it's not, we're not being selfish by saying, oh, unhealthy people don't like our show and healthy people do. If you listen to our show, that means you're healthy. It's not that, but it tends to be the person that's humble and looking for help finds the show and goes, I need this. Where the other person's like,
they're looking for solution. They're looking for information to make a change in their world and that for their kids. Yeah. And I would agree with that statement. Yeah. And within that, that ability to self-reflect, that means that they can start to move that scale. And part of that is learning to have an authoritative parenting style, which means for almost everybody, not everybody, but almost everybody in this conversation, to go out and up their game, to become more capable on every level, and to take a parenting class to understand child development, to do those pieces, which typically most parents don't do.
And I find sometimes, sorry, this is totally off the cuff, authoritarian and authoritative are hard for me, and you heard me get it wrong earlier, right? Could you call those three parenting styles like, the dictator, the healthy leader, and the pushover?
Kind of, yeah. No, that's a really good step down for it. Yeah.
Because they're less like dictator and healthy leader or loving leadership are so different, where authoritarian and authoritative are a little harder in my head.
Right.
But really what we're talking about with authoritarian is like my way or the highway, shut up, you get in trouble, there's punishment, it's loud, you know what I mean?
Right.
Where leaders, if you look at Gandhi, are not necessarily loud. They create a ton of respect around them, right? And people go, I want to follow you, right? I'm looking up to you and want to follow you, and you know the way, and let me stick with you, right? It's not loud and authoritative or dictatorial.
And not everybody has leadership skills, but everybody can get leadership skills.
That's what's interesting is just like I don't know how to change a diaper, so you go learn, and now you do. Leadership, sure, you can be born with some of it naturally like anything else, but you can learn this. You can learn good leader. Like I've heard you say so many times to ask if someone's open for input. That's just a really good leadership technique, right? Whereas if you're not a good leader, you're like, dude, you're doing it wrong. And all of a sudden, everyone who's told they're doing it wrong basically shuts down. Right? Whereas if you say, I see your heart, I see your passion. Are you open to some feedback? Are you open to my help? You know what I mean? Can I help you get where you want to go and come alongside you? Those are exactly the same things. Like, I think there's something you could do better and I want you to know about it. There are two different approaches to that. Well, that's a learnable skill.
Right.
It takes patience and knowledge, right?
Right. Yeah. So less capable. Some of the other things that they're lacking in that they can get help with to become more capable. They need help in understanding how to self-regulate. Not everybody knows how to self-regulate. Not everybody has even heard about mindful practice. Not everybody understands the internal makeup of who we are and how to settle the nervous system. Most people don't know what fires the nervous system and how that works. So that's something that they can learn, that somebody that is less capable can do. But again, when we're looking at this and we're trying to assess the bell curve and where somebody's at and what they can do, is we want to stay out of judgment if somebody's not doing it, even if they've got the capacity to do it, because they're not doing it, and that pushes them to the left side of the scale. So this is the place of staying out of judgment of, well, they should be able to do it. Well, maybe they should be able to do it. Maybe they shouldn't be able to do it. Maybe they can't do it. Maybe they don't want to do it. And again, as we're making this assessment, we want to look at that and move them to the left, because that's where they are, not where we think that they should be, and move ourselves to the right, because that's not where we're at and that's not where we want to be. So this is, again, we're coming back to self. We're coming back to taking care of what we have the capacity for, what our capabilities are, if we are capable, more capable, or less capable, and not being in judgment of what they are doing, and just assessing them on the scale as to where they are. This is kind of like a student that is taking a math class, and they're in the middle of the bell curve. They're in the middle of the bell curve because they are doing one of two things. They don't have a math mind, or they don't want to take the time. And if the person takes the time, they can move that over.
Yep.
But if they don't have the math mind, they can sit there and hammer and hammer and hammer, and they're not going to move it over more than maybe a little bit. And if they just don't want to, then it's not going to move.
Right. And in our educational system, sorry to strike a chord because we're an educational family, I mean, there's some pretty significant weaknesses in our educational system, because we really have to be good at cramming short-term information and keeping it in your brain through the test, through the stressful experience of the test.
Right.
And that's a capacity thing too. Not are you smart? Can you function? Can you shop for groceries or balance your bank account? It's, can you memorize the trigonometry? You know what I mean? That very few people use in the world, and keep it in that brain of yours through the stressful event and how long the test lasts.
Yeah.
So some people do poorly because they didn't do the work. They were lazy or like just didn't do it. Some people haven't figured out how they learn very well. Some people don't have the capacity to, no matter how well they learn, to keep it in their head through the weird way that we test things. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because the real world is like, you want to be a carpenter, you hang out with carpenters who build cabinets until you can build cabinets. You know what I mean? There's nobody testing you. It's like, it basically, does the job get done? Yes or no? And are you as fast as the other guy, which doesn't really matter to anybody. You know what I mean? It's just your paycheck, right? That short-term cramming is very unique to the school environment anyway. And you may not have the capacity for that. I mean, I find this stuff really interesting to me. Like, this is really interesting because I just keep coming back to like how much sanity because you mentioned mindfulness, right? Mm-hmm. And you can tell me your thoughts, but I downloaded an app on mindfulness one time, the first time I ever heard about it. And, did like, I think 10 days of 10 minutes, and tell me if you agree. I mean, even 5 or 10 minutes a day can have a pretty significant effect if you're not mindful at all. Like if you're not used to being present and accept, and today meditation is not about emptying the mind, which I'm not even sure is possible. It's more about embracing the mind and not judging it and coming to peace with, like, so recently somebody said, hey, I want you to go watch this, I don't know, 2020 or Dateline or something. It was probably 2020 episode on mindfulness. And I remember the guy saying, hey, next time you're in the shower, why don't you stop and check and see if you're in the shower? And the guy interviewing goes, wait, what does that mean? And it's just stuck with me. And I'll actually say that to myself now driving. I'm like, well, where am I? Because I'm sitting in a car, but if my brain is in like all the bills that are due next week, I'm not in the car. Right. And that mindfulness, from my study of it, and I do believe if people start like 5 or 10 minutes a day, it can be incredibly useful. It might involve stillness. It might involve quietness, but it's not emptying your mind. It's going, what's going on? What's coming across my mind? Oh my gosh, I just had a negative thought about how my ex should be something different. All right, well, do I know that's true? I don't know. Should a cat meow? Yeah. Should a cat bark? No. How do I know a cat shouldn't bark? Because it doesn't.
Well, you can have that inquiry, and not to get too far off point here, but mindfulness or meditation, as I've learned it in some of the Eastern traditions, is, yeah, I'm having that thought. There's a thought, and just coming back to, I'm here.
It's like you just take note of it. Like,
right. There's a thought, and I'm here. There's
like I have a
thought, and I'm here.
I have a bill due next week. That's interesting. Okay, what's next? Deep breath. Mm-hmm. Think about your feet. Think about your knees. Think about your butt. Whatever.
Or think about nothing.
Think about nothing. And in some ways, you're just interrupting the pattern, the American pattern of watch advertisements and worry about the future.
Yeah. And we're trying to find that middle ground of what is the space of just being here. And that is that self-reflective piece, that meditative piece, that mindful piece is a part of moving more toward more capable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, the next piece on our outline here is dualistic thinking. And dualistic thinking, or being in awareness of dualistic thinking, is mindfulness, right? Yeah, there's that and there's this. And both can be right or both can be wrong. And it doesn't matter. It's, this is what's here. So again, that is this cognitive piece, that is the meditative piece, that is the present piece of being able, this so much, as you keep coming back to, Charlie, is the key component to being able to solve the problem. If we're out over here someplace and we're not here, we can't solve the problem that's at hand. We're trying to solve problems that aren't here at the moment.
Yes.
So coming back into, okay, what is it? What's important? What's the focus? Where do we want to go? And again, kicking down this, the judgmentalness of the less capable person is something that they are either in, right? Yeah. Or they can move away from. So if I can be out of judgment, I'm upping my scale. I'm moving to the right of this the bell curve.
And I was just listening. to the first interview with Eric again, the first podcast episode we did with Eric on dualistic thinking, right? And what's interesting is dualistic thinking, we often talk about the shoulds and shouldn'ts or the rights and wrongs, but there's a very natural trench you could fall into, kind of a well-worn path in having an X, like either a divorce or a separation in dualistic thinking, which is the way I want to do it versus the way they want to do it, and only those two.
Right. Right.
And the healthy, mindful person, I believe, staying present and just being capable and healthy is going to say, I'm probably not right either. That's that humility again. Like the what's best for the kids is probably not my way and not their way. It's something neither of us have thought of, or something that takes a stretch for us both. Like any good negotiation, you don't no one side gets everything they want, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the other way is not realistic in relationship. You have two people here, and there's two people on purpose, whether you like it or not. Like I even embrace that. You know what I mean? My kids have the mother that they should have. How do I know that? Because they do. Right? There's not some other alternative that could have happened that I get to depress myself over. No, she's in their life because she's the right mom for them. You know what I mean? We're the right parents for them. But that dualistic thinking of, no, he wants to do spanking and I want to do this or whatever. You know what I mean? Like those are the only two options. No, those aren't the only two options, right? There's other options. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna have a lot to say today, but the staying present and the not like falling into worry and future particularly is very helpful, because also in this group of people that we're speaking to, they look at what the other parent, who they consider to be unhealthy, and they might be, is doing, and they take it out to how it's going to hurt the kids for the rest of their life, basically, how it's going to screw them up as adults. And the reality is, if you came back to right now, we go, are your kids breathing? They are breathing. Are they individuals like you are, who are going to grow up one day and be able to think like grown-ups about their upbringing and make their own decisions? Yes, they are, right? Are your kids okay? They are okay. Like my kids are totally okay right now.
Right.
They're breathing.
They may adjust their perspectives later as they get more experience under their belt. Things are going to change. They're going to have more information. There's going to be more data points for them to solve. And we've got to trust that that's either going to happen or it's not. And we're just doing the best job we can here.
Right. And I guess it's a judgment, certainly a belief system that our listeners are sharing, which is, it would be better if the kids didn't have to go through these things that I'm seeing and don't want them to go through. And someone with inquiry would come say, can you know that that's true? Can you know that the highest possible spiritual path for your kids would be the easy way, with less pain and discomfort, versus this way? Because the universe certainly seems to have chosen this way. And I didn't make the planet. Something else did, and it seems pretty smart. So why am I questioning it? Because
or pretty random in either way. It's what it is, and we're traversing it, and we don't know.
Which is another form of dualistic. Like there's good and bad, and I'm looking at what's happening in the other home going, that is bad. Versus more mindful or present might be, well, that's different. I'm not going to do it here, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to trust that when my children go through that and come back here and have conversations about what that's like. And that's a leadership technique, right? Not to be the third degree, but to have conversations with them.
Mm-hmm.
How's your week been? What's going on? They share something really dark or that would freak people out, and you go, how do you feel about that? Well, tell me what your thoughts on that. When you grow up, or do you want to do it that way? Or what, you know what I mean? Just stay present, stay in communication.
Because, back to that, that idea of we don't know, and we keep coming back to this in podcast after podcast after podcast. But this is an indicator of our capacity for change, our capacity to work through these pieces, is to even come to the idea that this explosiveness that we may have between ourselves and an alienated child or somebody that moves away from us might be something in their own evolution that helps them down the road, that they've got a reflection back on, that they can help resolve internally for themselves and for their children. So again, as we stay present, as we keep clipping this down the road, that is what we want to be doing. And again, this is a sense of, and just staying with the theme today, that being in the less capable and being able to move to the more capable, and staying out of the judgment or the focus of, why can't this other person do it? They can't do it because they're not doing it. And if they could do it or they wanted to do it, they would be doing it, and that would be the patterning of it.
Right. That's that whole, like, you could try to get a cat to bark for the rest of your life, and at the end of your life, it's going to look at you and it's going to go meow, right? It's like one of the more helpful things I've ever heard in embracing reality. Like, look at your ex and see what they do, and that's basically what you can count on them doing. Any and all effort spent being upset that they are the way they are, or trying to make the cat a dog, it's not going to be fruitful and not going to help the kids.
And to just tack this back into where we started a little bit earlier with talking to the professionals that are listening to this,
right,
is that when you look at your clients from this perspective, when you give them something to do, if they can upscale their thought process, if they can engage in this process and make themselves more capable in the situation, then we know that we've got some room to work with. And if they don't, or they can't, or they won't, then to acknowledge that and go, okay, this is where they're at. And conversely, when we're looking at the other side of this from a dualistic standpoint, as like our clients here, their clients there, is to be able to look at the capacity of opposing counsel, of their client and whatnot, and to, again, upscale your perspectives in this, and to be able to work from your capacities of more capable, less capable, incapable, and how you also upscale your game in this as well, because it's important for the professionals to also be willing to move it. And the people that I know in their professions around this are constantly trying to upscale their hardware, their software, and understanding these components. So not getting into judgment, or not getting sucked into the judgment of the other side of this equation as well.
Yeah. Yep.
The other piece that I want to move through relatively quickly on this, because we're going to kind of shortly run out of time for this podcast, but the less capable is the person that's looking to others to solve the problems, not to tell me what's going on, rather than to find out for themselves. So that less capable person is going, I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. Tell me, fix me, take me, rather than this place of, I'm going to jump out and I'm going to go to the teachers. I'm going to go to the doctor. I'm going to go to these places, and I'm going to get my own information, and I'm going to solve the problem from here, rather than looking to somebody else to solve the problem. That's that victim, that incapacitated personality that is like, help, 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 rather than give me the information so I can learn how to do this, so I can learn how to solve this problem, so I can learn how to do this into the future. And what I'm looking for my clients, and what I hear frequently from them is, I get into a situation and I hear your voice. It's like, you've shown me how to do this, and then I can go in and I can do it. So again, that's that willingness of that less capable person as they start down the path to upgrading their capacities.
Yeah. And though it's going to be a crude analogy, I think a movie like Enough with Jennifer Lopez, where she's being abused and goes and learns a martial art, mm-hmm. though it has a very revenge-like ending, right? Mm-hmm. But that idea that I don't know the physical, like I said, did the same thing with changing the diaper. When you look at the physical part, it's just a good analogy, right? I don't know how to defend myself, and I live in a tough part of the neighborhood, or how to defend my kids, and you learn a martial art, whatever. We're talking about sort of some emotional, mental, non-physical versions of that with parenting and leadership and dealing with, I mean, just the skill of dealing with a difficult ex. There's nowhere in any of our schooling that we get even the basic level of training on this. Like, if you've got one of these people in your life, you're starting from white belt for sure. It's not like the third semester of your junior year, they talked about when you divorce and the person has borderline personality disorder. That never happens, right? This is always going to be new. So we're all starting from pretty incapable of knowing how to deal with it healthy, and have to go out and learn. You're just talking about taking responsibility, going, I need to learn this. Like, no, it's not going to be fun, but I have to learn this.
One of the last pieces in this category of less capable that, we want to be able to look at as an indicator that it's there either in us or in other is that they don't like to be told what to do, but they don't know what to do. It's like, I don't know what to do. Don't tell me what to do. And it's like, what? It's like this oppositional component of, yeah, I'm not going to listen to you, but I'm not going to learn. So that's a really large indicator of the less capable moving toward the incapable, because that statement in and of itself is like, I'm not going to upgrade. I'm not going to make a change. Don't tell me what to do. I know what to do. No, I don't know what to do, but I'm not going to do it different. This isn't working, but I'm not going to change. And that is moving toward that incapable category where we're looking at personality disorders, where we're looking at this narcissistic component, that self-centered, explosive, exploitive personality.
Yeah.
Or the borderline, which is the unstable, the explosive, and the victim personalities, or the histrionics of creating all the drama that goes along with that, and or the addictions. And when we get into this category, we know what they are. We've seen them historically. They've been in our world. We've looked at it. And by now, if you've been listening to these podcasts long enough, if you've been working with these concepts, we know that these are stably unstable and we're not going to change them. That's what we're dealing with. And we have to keep upscaling our stuff to be able to understand how to deal with them. And at the end of all of this story that we've been talking about for almost the last hour is to step back, to listen to this, to look at it, and to adjust your expectations accordingly. To look at the bell curve, to see where they are, to see where you are, to see what your capacities for change are and their capacities for change. And then, understanding that what each of this means is, how do we set our boundaries? How do we move forward from here and create the structure that is going to encapsulate the long-term care of our kids and our own sanity? I mean, this is important. I mean, it's about the kids, but it's about us too. I mean, if we're not okay, they're not okay. If everybody's in chaos, everybody's in chaos. If we're not in chaos, then fewer people are in chaos, and we're starting to stabilize it.
Right. Exactly. That's awesome. I mean, I keep coming back to the word humility because just every part of what you talked about today, it seems like it starts with humility to go. I mean, I had a guy call me from my podcast in the financial planning and say, I own a business. I'm saving money. I have all these accounts, but they're not going the way. I don't know what to do. I need guidance. Well, that's the starting point for growth, right? Is the humility to reach out and say, I need to change something, or I need help. And the incapable people don't have that trigger that shows them that. So they might, like you said, they may not know what to do, but they're certainly not going to let you tell them what to do or go seek help because they're in their minds, they're perfect and everybody else is wrong. Right. All right, cool. Anything else you want to say on it?
I think that covers the flybys on this one, Charlie.
Awesome. Well, this is episode 63. What are reasonable expectations, or sort of the bell curve of capability? Be honest. See where you are on the bell curve and get the help you need and grow and become a great leader, great parent. And then on the other side, don't judge. Just look at it, call it what it is, and embrace it, because it's not something that you can change. And you'll be a lot better parent and a lot more sane if you just embrace it. So we'll see you guys next week.